5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
How about we do it again?
6, 7, 4, 3, 2, 1. I think I farted.
Okay, let's try one more
I
time.
definitely.
Ready?
I can move you. Making review.
Say 6,
6,
5,
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hello and welcome to the 109th episode of Rank and Review. Returning guest Mireille Smith is going to help me talk about 6 films that talk about mental illness. So I hope you guys enjoy that, and I hope you go into it understanding that there's going to be spoilers and that there's going to be coarse language. As always, I'm your host and random Canadian Larry Parsons. I would welcome any feedback you had to give me. You can send that feedback to ranknreview@gmail.com. That's ranknreview@gmail.com. So how does Hollywood treat mental illness? And is mental illness something that should be mixed in with entertainment, or can it be entertaining? I think that in 2017, we're starting to take mental illness a little bit more seriously. So I thought it would be appropriate to look back and see how Hollywood has handled it. Stay tuned, kids. Mireille Smith is back on the podcast. We're doing an interesting subject here. Mental illness as entertainment. I'm going to say right out the gate, maybe this is a spoiler, but for the most part, I like all of the movies that we're going to be talking about today. But I feel like I'm going to be highly critical of them at the same time. Mm-hmm. So I guess I just wanted to start off by sort of saying, I'm coming at it from a very personal place. I know a lot of people who suffer from mental illness. I've lost people to mental illness, and it seems like a subject that, especially today, needs to be taken more seriously.
Yeah, so, definitely.
I think that, as well-intentioned as a lot of these movies are, I'm going to be doing my ranks and ratings on the basis of that title. Mental illness as entertainment. Are we just laughing at these people? Are we learning something from these people? Is it compassionate or condescending? Mm-hmm. That's sort of my approach to it. I was just thinking about it before we started recording. I thought I might come off a little bit hard. And I don't want you to think that I'm cynical or against romantic comedies, which some people might describe some of these as loosely. I think they're kind of more that dreaded word, dramedies. They try and give you a little bit of everything, and it's a weird balance, a tough balance to make. But anyway, that's my take coming into this. I'd love to hear yours.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same space with it. I also pretty much like all of these movies, and but I don't think any of these are disrespectful. And one of the reasons that I chose this list was that when I was just scrolling through all of your choices, your hundreds and hundreds of lists, I think that this might be the only one that I had seen all of them before.
Oh, wow.
And we think, I wonder if there's a reason for that. I wonder if I'm just, kind of interested or attracted to this kind of story. So yeah, I was interested to watch them again.
It's not just your affinity for Johnny Depp?
Oh, God. No, Johnny Depp's not my favorite.
We get two Johnny Depps this episode, and they both
Yeah.
came out of 1993. Well, I mean, I don't think he got his huge blockbuster out the way until the Pirates of the Caribbean movie came out. But I do think 93 was probably the year that made Johnny Depp the it boy.
Yeah.
I wasn't a big fan of his TV show. And yeah, he was in Nightmare on Elm Street, but nobody knew him as Johnny Depp from Nightmare on Elm Street. Is there anything you wanted to say by way of introduction before I list off the movies and we start? Is there anything you want to get off your chest?
No, I think I'd rather you lead the conversation and I will follow.
Thank you for coming back. We didn't wait a decade. We did it like a year and change later. So here we are. We're back.
Yeah.
The 6 movies we are going to be reviewing on the theme of mental illness as entertainment. We have Benny and Joon and What's Eating Gilbert Grape, the Johnny Depp 93 double feature. We have the Royal Tenenbaums. We have Thumbsucker. We have an interesting little ditty called Lars and the Real Girl. And we're going to finish with Silver Lining Playbook.
All
1,
right.
2, 3, go.
Go.
Boom.
What's she gonna do? She paints and she reads.
Yeah, she paints, she reads, she lights things on fire.
I got a fire extinguisher. Just bring her.
Come on, play cards.
Soft on the rope, slightly used.
You take my cousin off my hands.
Wait.
I lost
What's in the pot?
a cousin.
I am not taking this guy home.
Did you see those raisins on TV? The ones that sing and dance and stuff?
They scare me.
Yeah, me too.
Knock it off. I'm her brother, and I'm her only family.
One of the first things that I want to talk about when we go into Benny and Joon is what happened to Mary Stuart Masterson.
Yeah.
I don't know if you were a big John Hughes fan. I was a big John Hughes fan when I was a kid, and Some Kind of Wonderful was like Pretty in Pink with the right ending. You know, like I really, really liked that. I really liked her in it, and I've always had kind of a soft spot for her, and she just disappeared. I was watching Blue's Clues, which is a show you've probably not heard of because you don't have children, with my son Tristan. This was years ago. And she showed up on this kids show playing Cinderella. And I was like, no. I mean, I'm glad she got work and everything, but I think she should be a player. I think she's a really good actress.
Yeah.
In Benny and
thing
Joon... Sorry?
Sorry, the thing I remember her from is her role in Fried Green Tomatoes.
Of course.
That's the one that always comes back for me.
Yeah. She's always good. Like, she's always been a really solid actress, I thought. So she sort of plays our central character. They never specifically diagnose her in the movie, but it seems to be some form of schizophrenia. But this has in common with some of the other movies that we're going to be talking about, where although the focus is Mary Stuart Masterson, Joon, and her illness, I think a case could be made that most of the main characters in the movie are suffering from some form of mental illness or not.
Yeah, and actually I think that's true of a lot of these movies.
Yeah. It's early 90s. It's got a great cast, a lot of familiar faces. In the background even, Oliver Platt, a one-scene role from William H. Macy. And it's a sweet, well-intentioned romantic comedy with this backdrop of the mental illness stuff. And I think the sweetness and the warmth of the characters really go a long way to sell the fact that they're skating over a lot of the hard edges on the mental illness. This is what I mean about me being cynical about these movies, because this is just a movie that wants to put a smile on your face, just be warm and just be romantic. But I don't know that it's taking the illness 100% seriously. Mm-hmm. That's where I start.
Yeah, some of the I guess interesting things I would say is when you're talking about family dynamics with mental illness, there's often the problem of treating adults as children, and here we have the brother who I guess we haven't really gone through the plot yet, but the Johnny Depp character and Joon fall in love, and the brother just can't handle it and throws him out of the house. And
he's very threatened by it.
Yeah, and it's just so sad. I mean, she's a grown-up.
Yeah.
And so I like that they showed that, but then further to the love story, we do have the issue where and I guess this is where the romantic comedy comes in. But yeah, it's kind of like, well, love conquers all, and it can help cure your mental illness, and I mean that's just ridiculous.
It's naive. Yeah. Benny and Joon are brother and sister. They live together in this house, and they've lost their parents at a young age, and it's affected them both to the negative. Basically, Benny has this need to look after Joon. He's become the parent figure and basically dedicated his life to her exclusively. And Joon has, like I say, some form of schizophrenia, but it sort of manifests itself as quirk. There's a couple of scenes where she's vaguely threatening. She blows a tissue paper off of a fan into a candle and leaves the tissue burning on the floor. Like, there's a bit of danger to it, but for the most part, she kind of comes off as cute.
Right.
The interesting thing about the Johnny Depp character is this 26-year-old guy shows up in the town. He's illiterate and is basically just couch hopping. And seems like brought in from another time. He's obsessed with old movies, Charlie Chaplin, sort of slapstick physical comedy. And he is just as quirky as she is, although he's undiagnosed as far as what his deal is. But you have to think that there's maybe something. Now, I know the movie portrays it as Benny gets stuck having to take in the Johnny Depp character because he loses a bet or in a card game or whatever, or Joon does. But I don't know how Benny doesn't see this romance blossoming between these two as a thing that would happen. The fact that doesn't occur to him, I think, isn't even really credible. They're about the same age, they're both super weird, and they just constantly throwing doe eyes at each other. So the other conflict is that the psychiatrist, who I think has been sort of quietly treating both of them, I think it's on the auspices that she's treating Joon, but she seems to offer a lot of advice to Benny as well. She thinks that Joon might need to be institutionalized. And, of course, Benny is very resistant to that. But the idea of her living on her own doesn't seem realistic either. So, I mean, they're just taking it seriously in that there are stakes, but I don't know that, especially with something as serious as schizophrenia, she hears voices a few times, or she eats peanut butter, Captain Crunch, and milk in a blender. That's her daily breakfast. She's got these routines. Again, that seems cute, but then all of a sudden, she has a scene where she's super crazy. I don't know. I think it works better as a sweet romantic comedy. And I think if you're taking it too seriously, as clearly I am, there are things that you can pull. You can pull threads.
Yeah.
But it's hard to hate a movie that just wants to put a smile on your face, too. So, am I being mean to it?
No, I don't think you're being mean to it. I mean, I guess I feel the same way. There are a lot of cute scenes, and all the kind of when Joon is after her episode in the bus, she's in the psychiatric hospital, and the brother Benny has to get on side again with Johnny Depp in order to try to get his sister to talk to him, because obviously she gets very angry when he tells her that she can't be with Sam.
Yeah.
So they try to sneak into her room, and there's that scene with Johnny Depp kind of swinging back and forth across the window, and she's on the second or third floor or something like that. Those scenes are cute, but I mean, I don't know. silly too at the same time. And if you're going to take that seriously, it's I don't think that's what the movie.
The case can be made.
Before.
I mean, Hollywood makes the case that like you said, love will cure all things. But a case can be made that if she's so in such a bad place mentally right now that she needs to be institutionalized, maybe a relationship isn't a good idea, right? I mean, there's something to say to like try and having your shit together before you enter into someone else's world, right? Just a working theory. I also like that everybody knows Joon, so they kind of accept that she's mentally ill, but they don't embrace it. It's not like they love Benny so much that they support his supporting of Joon. But the Johnny Depp character really does seem like this homeless person that wandered into town that everyone's just like not too sure about. And what we're going to see in some of the later films, which I think is less credible, is an entire community's embracing someone with mental illness, which I don't know. I think that this movie navigates that better. But when I go to the end sort of scene towards the movie where we see Johnny Depp and Mary Stuart Masterson and they're together and Benny won't interrupt them. He just lets them be. I wonder what this couple looks like. Fast forward 10 years. You know, what kind of life are they going to etch out for each other? Like what Johnny Depp can barely read. He works at a video store and that's going to be closing really soon.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that video's been closed for 10 years already now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Joon, there's no magic pill to cure Joon, and it looks like there's a pretty steep uphill battle for Johnny Depp. I guess they have each other, and that's sweet, but that is not...
Well, they have each other, and they're trying to solve that problem with the Ruthie character. So actually, that was one of my least favorite plot points in this movie was the relationship they were trying to develop between Benny and Ruthie, Julianne Moore.
Yeah. Terrible hair in that movie.
Sorry?
Terrible hair in that movie.
Yeah.
I love Julianne Moore, but yeah. But she owns that apartment complex where, Benny and Joon end up living. So I guess she can kind of watch over them. And if she's in a relationship with Benny, then they're all a big happy family who can look out for each other. Right. And I mean, it doesn't sew it up in a sweet little button. Everything's going to go on, but it's a rom-com. It's a good date movie. I don't know that it's a good movie about mental illness, but I think it's a good, sweet, romantic comedy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what else to say about Benny and Joon.
No, I don't have anything else to say about Benny and Joon either.
Okay. Again, it may rank lower on the list than its charm suggests it should, but check out Benny and Joon.
Andorra. It's a town where nothing much ever happens. This is where I live with my family. Doctor said we'd be lucky if Arnie lived to be 10.
I could go at any time.
Arnie, don't be rude. Some days you want him to live.
I kill him, Gilbert.
I know, buddy.
Okay, son, come down now.
Hey!
Some days you don't.
When is this gonna stop?
And then there's Mama.
That's my mom in there.
You see, with Mama, there's no nice way to break it to you.
She's not all that big, Gilbert. I saw a guy at the state fair who was a little bit bigger.
I haven't always been like this.
I haven't always been like this.
Gilbert, I'll need a delivery later.
If nothing ever happens here...
It's those lobsters, isn't it?
Why does it always happen to me?
What's Eating Gilbert Grape is a motion picture directed by Lasse Hallström, and it has a fairly interesting star-studded cast, which portrays all of the citizens of a small town, and specifically one family, which has just a maelstrom of mental illnesses circling around it. Obviously, the one that hits most close to home to me is the character portrayed by Leonardo DiCaprio, who is fairly severely autistic. I've gone on in the past in the podcast, it's sort of a personal thing for me. I much prefer, if you're going to have a character who's autistic in a movie, that A, they be there for a reason, and B, that they be treated honestly. And The big compliment I want to get out of the gate is that I do think that they handle the autism in this movie very well. Not just the great portrayal by Leonardo DiCaprio, and I think it remains one of his best performances, but the community's reaction to him. There are some people that seem to get it, and there are other people that just are exasperated and furious by his very existence. His presence seems to bother them. His mother, who used to be a former beauty queen, is now so overweight that she cannot physically leave the home that she's living in. And her daughters can't wait to be gone, and Johnny Depp has sort of taken the de facto parent role again. And he's sort of the Benny character in this movie from Benny and Joon, where he's sort of holding the burden of everyone else on himself. And aside from a knowingly dead end affair with the local grocer's wife, and a few things that he allows for himself, his entire existence is predicated on caring for his family and not for himself. So I think there's some depression there at the very least.
Yeah.
There's a lot of balls in the air, a lot of characters, and a lot of great actors sort of playing, like I say, Crispin Glover playing the mortuary attendant, John C. Reilly in the background there. The movie's full of color and full of charm, just like Benny and Joon. But unlike, I would say, Benny and Joon, it's much more successful at handling the material, the serious material.
Definitely.
So, Johnny Depp's life is very, very structured, very, very looking after the family. And then all of a sudden, Juliette Lewis and her caravan of trailer folk show up in town. And all of a sudden, he has a romance that he can take seriously. And he gets a picture of a bigger world that he could maybe someday be a part of. But the idea of just abandoning his family, which is what it would feel like, is difficult. Mm-hmm. What'd you think of What's Eating Gilbert Grape, girl?
Because it's one of the older movies on this list, I hadn't watched it for a while. And, it's good. It's an interesting story, and Leonardo DiCaprio does a great job playing Arnie. I mean, I thought he was completely believable, and you have the realistic portrayal, I think, of the frustrations of the family members. I mean, one of Arnie's favorite things to do is to go climb the water tower in town. And, I mean, it's not just an inconvenience, it's dangerous. I mean, he climbs high, can fall off, and, the police have to get involved, and they have to get him down from there. And, of course, to Arnie, he's just, having a bit of fun. Yeah. And so those scenes were really good. And the scenes between Johnny Depp and Leonardo DiCaprio, I think, were some of them really kind of painful and touching. Like it's Gilbert's job to give Arnie his bath and get him to bed at night. And there's one scene where he wants to go back and hang out with Juliette Lewis, so he asks Arnie to get up and go put himself to bed on his own, feeling like, we've done this every night together for how many years. He can do it, yeah. But of course, and he doesn't give it another thought, but of course he comes home, goes to bed, and then gets up the next morning and finds Arnie is freezing cold, just shivering, still in the tub, and it's just heartbreaking. Yeah.
And it's the first time, I think, that at least that we've seen in the movie that he's really failed Arnie. And he knows it, and everybody knows it. It's like, you see what happens when you try to do something for yourself? Right? Yeah. Your brother could have got pneumonia. He could have died, and it was your fault. That scene is absolutely heartbreaking, and just the realization of it. He's just walking bleary-eyed into the bathroom and checking himself out in the mirror, and then suddenly it dawns on him that his brother is still sitting in that tub. Brutal. Yeah. Just the way you were talking about the cops taking him off the water tower, that's a regular occurrence. They do that all the time, and the sheriff is so fucking sick of it. And all of the spectators walking around applauding as he's rescued again, like a cat out of a tree. But when the third time I think it happens in the movie, they actually arrest him, and he throws Arnie in the back of the car. He smashes Arnie's head on the lip of the door as he's going into the car. Doesn't give a shit. Doesn't recognize it. Doesn't it's interesting because I think what a lot of people miss about autistic people, or it's a spectrum, so I won't say all autistic people, but a lot of them, is that they honestly don't register emotion on other people, you know? They don't understand. Like, they'll maybe understand that they've done something wrong, but they don't understand that that's upsetting you or that you're upset. Like, they're sort of so in their own little place that it's hard to get out of it. So, I've never seen that quite done as well. I mean, you can do mimicry, you can, you know, hang out with autistic people and sort of catch some of the tics and hums and mannerisms that are commonly seen. But to get into the psychology of that, and it's not out of spite. That's, I think, why people get frustrated. Is so that I've told you this before. I mean, can't you see how upset? Well, no, he doesn't recognize that you told him that before, and no, he doesn't recognize that it's making you upset. You know, and it's really hard to deal with, right? It can be really difficult. So they managed to do that and keep the proceedings light. Now, to move the focus over to the mother, the only thing that can spur her out of that house is to protect her kids.
Yeah.
It's an interesting confrontation. Like, she leaves the house, she drives into town, she makes a huge spectacle out of herself. It's got to be really uncomfortable, maybe like humiliating. And she confronts the sheriff, and he has told her that if this keeps happening, this kid's going to be arrested. And he arrested the kid, and he's not technically by the letter of the law wrong. And she just demands her son back. She doesn't say, you know, give me a court date. She doesn't say, like, you know, we'll settle, we'll figure some punishment for him. She just outright, flatly demands, give me my son. And I don't know, like, as a parent, that hits something primal. Like, I thought it was an incredibly strong scene. And for all these incredibly strong scenes, they do not forget the charm and sort of the quirk of the small town. You can still have quirk. You can still sort of have that Benny and Joon vibe. You just need to be honest about the characters.
Yeah, and another example of that is just the respect, but then immediate almost disrespect they have towards their mother. Example I'm thinking of is when they realize that because of her weight, there's a danger that the beams in the living room floor, or the beams are not going to hold, and they kind of sneak in the John C. Reilly character into the basement, and you know, they don't want her to know that they're doing this, but they're going to have to reinforce that basement ceiling.
Yeah.
And you know, and so they're talking about it and trying to fix it without upsetting the mother, but you know, in the 30 seconds later, Johnny Depp is, you know, they can see neighborhood kids lurking about, and he, you know, gestures to one of them to come, and he lifts up the kid so that he can have a look at the you know, his obese mother, you know. Yeah. So it's kind of, it's, you get both sides for sure.
Well, and you can see how he would be frustrated with his mother. I mean, she did get out of the house to bail out her son, but for the most part, she doesn't get out of the house. For the most part, the groceries, the getting of the to and fro of all of the kids, that's all been on Johnny Depp. And he does have some resentment. He won't express that to her, but he will let the neighborhood kids take a gander at the freak in the house at the corner, you know. And, you know, that gives him dimension. Another performance I want to talk about is Juliette Lewis. Strange figure, Juliette Lewis. Sometimes I really like her. Sometimes I kind of feel like she's nails down the chalkboard. This is one of the few movies where she comes across as maybe, just maybe, dateable.
But I think she's cute. She's cute.
No, she's just got a strange vibe, and she usually plays, well, I won't say usually. A lot of the movies that I've seen her in, she plays these sort of shrill, naive characters. I'm thinking about like Natural Born Killers or California or Cape Fear. And, you know, it just... she's usually not a weak character, but there's something shrill and off-putting about her sometimes in some of these movies. None of that is present here. I totally get why Johnny Depp would be into her and why he would, you know, make excuses and cut corners to spend more time with her. Especially because, you know, as far as he knows, they're on a very limited timeline here. She's only stopping to get repairs done, and they will be hitting that highway and driving into the sunset soon. And it's not good. Mary Steenburgen.
Yeah.
As a very sad housewife living a very sad existence, talking about sort of
a really
B-side sort of storyline, B-plot story in here about just how people can come to regret the decisions they've made, but find themselves so deep in the trap that they couldn't think to begin to get themselves out of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like everybody in the town has something. All of the people we meet have quirks. I think the most generally well-balanced character we meet might be the John C. Reilly character. But Crispin Glover is the mortician. You get the feeling he's got a few screws loose. But that might just because he's being played by Crispin Glover. But yeah, I found there's a real melancholy in the movie. But it's balanced sort of by a sweetness to sort of help the medicine go down. And it sort of provides us with the same uncertain ending that Benny and Joon did. There's a big dramatic death that happens in the third act, but I'm talking mainly about Johnny Depp and Arnie joining the caravan of trailers and driving into the distance. Like, how will Arnie adapt to an environment that changes every day? Usually he has a very strict, regimented sort of environment. How's he going to adapt to that? We don't know. It's not going to be easy.
Yeah. And I mean, they've had change forced upon them with the death of the mother. So I guess, they've already had this extreme change that he's had to deal with. So what better time than, to introduce more change.
Yeah. Well, things were going to change. They couldn't not. So that's the other thing I wanted to talk about: the death of the mother, which is another heartbreaking scene. They go all the way to having Arnie trying to wake her up, which is just fucking brutal.
Yeah, that is really sad. So sad.
But the decision to burn down the house, as opposed to having a wall taken out and having some kind of crane lift their mother out. Mm-hmm. And the sort of burning of everything down. It's a very powerful moment, but upon this viewing, I was thinking about it and was wondering, was that a necessary thing to happen? That burning of the house and maybe the death of the mother to free Johnny Depp and his family? Would he have changed if his mother had not died?
Yeah, I guess we don't know.
It's a hard question to answer. I know I'm not really, seriously asking you to answer it, but like, you've talked to the writer, right? But it's interesting and it's rich, And of the two Johnny Depp movies from 1993 that dealt with mental illness, this is the one that got me a little dusty in my eyes. This is the one that I think actually hits emotionally. I've heard some people sort of have turned around on this and think that there's some things like a little bit saccharine and over the top about it. But even the emotion, the burning of the house, I kind of embraced it. It was cathartic for them, and it was in a way sparing their mother one last humiliation.
I agree. The only thing they didn't really have the option to wait, but it seemed kind of windy. I was kind of worried that they might burn the whole town down, but yeah, they didn't go there.
No, I don't think that was the movie. All in all, I'm a big fan of What's Eating Gilbert Grape. Is there anything else you wanted to say before we move on?
Leading another beautiful moment I thought was when the mother gets to meet, or Johnny Depp introduces Juliette Lewis to his mother.
Yes.
And it's a really sweet moment, and it's after that she decides that she's going to actually walk up the stairs and go lay on the bed. And I think they're giving us, trying to tell us that this positive interaction maybe was going to be a catalyst for change for her.
Right.
And, the first steps towards that was actually walking upstairs, doing something different. But, she died, whether or not, not necessarily as a result of that, but it's just sad that she didn't get to try to change after that. Yeah. Sad,
but sweet, well acted, charming. Check out What's Eating Gilbert Grape.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm sad, Meg. And then we laugh.
There were 3 extraordinary children in the Tenenbaum family. Margot Tenenbaum was an acclaimed playwright and won a Pulitzer Prize in the 9th grade.
What'd you think, Dad?
Didn't seem believable to me.
Richie Tenenbaum was a champion tennis player ranked 2nd in the world by age 17. Chaz Tenenbaum was a financial expert and started buying real estate in his early teens.
I said sell it, yeah.
Well, I'm on my way.
They were brilliant. They were famous. They were unlucky enough to be the children of a man named Royal Tenenbaum.
He also stole bonds out of my safety deposit box when I was 14.
Now, for the first time in 22 years, they are all living together under the same roof.
I hear you're dying.
Oh, how long are you gonna last? A month, a year? I've got 6 weeks to set things right. I want this family to love me.
Rightly so.
You know who I am? I'm your granddad.
His name is Royal Tenenbaum.
You told us he was already dead.
Let's hit it.
How are you feeling?
I'm having a ball. Scrapping and yelling.
You stay away from my children. Do you understand?
My God, I haven't been in here for years.
Hey! Are you listening to me?
Yes, I am! Mixing it up. Are you trying to steal my woman? I beg your pardon.
I want you out of my house!
Oh, yeah?
Right on!
Loving every minute with this damn crew. What's so funny?
It's these little expressions of yours.
I don't know what you're talking about, but I'll take it as a compliment. How interesting. How bizarre.
All right, welcome to the review of the Royal Tenenbaums. And as I was just saying to Mireille, that this is the first Wes Anderson film that's being reviewed on my podcast, and he's one of my favorite. He's one of my favorite filmmakers. I know he's a divisive figure, but not only that, not only is this my first review of Wes Anderson, but this is going to be the review of this bunch that proves me a huge hypocrite. Because I've been all on about taking your subject seriously, taking the subject of mental illness seriously. And a big part of that is housing it in the real world. And Wes Anderson doesn't deal in the real world. It's all about artifice. It's all about formality and presentation. And there's something consciously formal about it. When they run the credits, they say, Gene Hackman as Royal Tenenbaum. It's almost like they're presenting you the cast of a play. And all the details of the world are fully formed, up to the books on the bookshelf and up to the name of the cab company that they use. It's all made of artifice, like all movies are, but it's not any way trying to plant itself in the real world. And the magic of most Wes Anderson movies is, in spite of this, he ends up broadsizing you with real emotional hits, typically throughout the movie, that kind of you don't see coming. You're kind of all caught up in the whimsy and the aw shucks and the strange vibe of the movie, and then all of a sudden you realize it's making you feel things. I realize not everybody reacts that way to Wes Anderson, but I do. And in one of its purest forms, because it was one of the first of his movies that I saw, the Royal Tenenbaums looms high in that register. But the question I guess I will start with you in the story of a family of millionaire geniuses who have lost their mojo is it taking mental illness seriously?
I'm gonna say yes, it is.
All right, review done.
Done. I think that I agree with what you just said. I think it's absolutely possible to use whimsy and sort of a
artifice
to represent truths, and I think it's really successful here. I mean, I'm in love with the aesthetic, Wes Anderson aesthetic, and this movie in particular, and. I mean,
it's one of those things, it's going to vibe with you or it isn't. I think Wes Anderson and I have very similar taste in music, so that really helps. That the soundtrack really appeals to me. He does deal in montage quite a bit. Two people who I really respect quite a bit, my mom's not a huge fan of this movie, and my sister called this movie one of the most boring movies she'd ever seen. And that breaks my heart. But I guess I understand that if you don't sort of slip into the groove of the movie, like if it doesn't sort of coalesce with you, that then you got 110 minutes of stuff that's not connecting with you. If it doesn't connect, it's really not going to connect. But the flip side of the coin is that if it does connect, it's really going to connect. The Tenenbaum children have all grown up basically raised by their mother, essentially. Gene Hackman Royal's been largely absent from their lives. But as children, they were incredibly successful. Chaz was a real estate tycoon, and he invented his own breed of mice. The one older brother is a tennis pro. The Gwyneth Paltrow character was writing hit plays before she was 15 years old, which is not unprecedented actually in the real world. That has happened. But they seem to have grown up in this really luxurious state of, all of their cares taken care of, all of their wants taken care of, and all of their talents allowed to blossom to their fullest extreme. Right. And in spite of all of this, we catch up with them in their late 30s or early 30s, somewhere in there. And all of them have washed up in terrible places. Gwyneth Paltrow is in a loveless marriage with Bill Murray, and she spends most of her time locked in the bathroom, soaking in the tub. Richie? Is it Richie? Yeah. The tennis pro is grown a beard and worn glasses as a mask to protect himself from the world, and is traveling the world trying to deny the fact that he's fallen in love with his adopted sister.
Yeah.
And
Awkward.
Yeah, and Chaz, played by Ben Stiller, is now a single father raising 2 kids, and after the loss of his wife, is just living in mortal terror of anything happening to them. He's clearly post-traumatic stress, clearly shell-shocked. And then we have Eli, the friend of the family that lived across the street, who's not as wealthy as the Tenenbaums, but who fell into success by writing cheesy Western novels, but has developed in his later life a fairly severe and damaging drug problem. In the midst of all of this storm, Royal Tenenbaum decides he wants to reinsert himself in their life because he hears news that Eileen is going to remarry. And even though Ethelene, is going to remarry. And even though they've been apart for almost 15 years at this point or more, that doesn't sit well with him. So Royal inserts himself in their lives through a series of terrible, terrible lies and tries to reconnect with his family. I know that's kind of a long sort of synopsis, but there's a lot of balls in the air with the movie. Yeah. Tell me what you feel about the Royal Tenenbaums, mate.
Well, I mean, it's the story of a very dysfunctional family, and they end up all coming together to deal with Royal's fake stomach cancer, and they have to confront each other. The first child to come back into the family home is Chaz with his kids Uzi and Ari, and I just love the scenes with his family. He's overprotective of his sons now that his wife has died, and he runs spontaneous fire drills just to make sure that they're safe and on the ball. And after a poor showing in their fire escape, he brings them to Etheline's house. And I just love that scene where he brings them in and she's got a social gathering happening, and he just says, it's not safe at our place, we're moving in. And she's okay.
Well, and then interesting to that, it's when the Gwyneth Paltrow Margot finds out that he's moved home. She's like, how come he gets to move home? If he gets to move home, then I get to move home. It's basically... I kind of find Margot to be the hardest character to access in a lot of ways. Her adopted father was never particularly nice to her, but he was also never particularly nice to his other kids. Richie was the only kid he even seemed to attempt to bond with. But on top of being adopted to then be rejected by half of her new parents, seems to have really fucked her up.
Well, he's constantly telling everybody she's adopted.
This is my adopted daughter, Margot.
Right. And he doesn't, she almost doesn't show up on his radar, when he's trying to connect with her as an adult. She tells him that her middle name is,
she tells him her middle name.
Her middle name is Helen,
Yeah.
and that's my mother's name. Yes, I know. Just like the way those lines are delivered is, I think, one of the things that makes me really like Wes Anderson movies, and this one in particular. Just, yeah.
Aside with Gene Hackman, I think Gene Hackman's a great actor. I really, really do. But by all accounts, he was a huge prick on the set of this movie.
Really?
Yeah, Wes Anderson really loved him as an actor, pictured him as Royal Tenenbaum, wrote Royal Tenenbaum with him in mind, showed the script to Gene Hackman, or pitched it to him as he was writing it, and Gene Hackman said, I don't like when people write stuff for me or whatever, but he still gave him the offer, he still said yes, and Gene Hackman was miserable. Everybody on set, like when they were doing press for the film when it first came out, everybody was mum, but since have said that he was in-fucking-possible. He showed no respect for the director, kept on telling him to pull up his pants, and was belligerent and almost against the project. He was Brandoing this project. I don't think he got it. I don't think he liked the weird costumes he was wearing. I don't think he understood the aesthetic of the world. But this is what a professional actor can bring. He may have hated every fucking second he was there, but he is awesome. He's awesome in the movie. Royal is an unbelievable son of a bitch. But we kind of like him by the end of the movie. At least I do. I mean, I don't sympathize necessarily with him. I mean, all of these things he's done to himself. But he's earnestly trying to make good on something that you just can't make good for. And, he's trying anyway. He doesn't have to even do that at this point, right? So, there's a scene... Sorry?
His relationship with Pagoda is really revealing too,
yes.
Because we find out that he met Pagoda. I don't remember where they were, but Pagoda had stabbed him, and then brought him to the hospital and helped him not die. And then later on in this movie, when Royal ends up screwing over Pagoda again, he stabs him again and
takes him to get stitched up.
Takes him to the hospital again. But they're still buds. They still got each other's backs.
Yeah. I think that one of my favorite things is when he apologizes to the Danny Glover character. Yes, Danny Glover is also in this movie. Everybody is in this fucking movie. But he's been basically trying to destroy this engagement between he and Etheline, and he says to him, most of my life I've just been kind of an asshole. That's sort of been my style, but it would really bum me out if I thought you weren't going to forgive me. And the response was, I don't think you're an asshole. I just think you're sort of a son of a bitch. And it's so perfect. It's so perfect. I got broadsided by Ben Stiller in this movie. His character is kind of shrill and hard to take because you know where it's coming from, but it's not particularly funny, and you worry about those kids. I mean, the one thing Royal might be right about is taking those kids out and giving them a legitimate good time, because they live a very stressful existence around their damaged father. They seem to be dealing with the death way better than their dad.
Yeah.
But there's two scenes which I just think Ben Stiller just knocks me over. There's the one scene, I think, where he's setting up the boys in the bunk bed and saying goodnight to them, and he goes to leave the room, and then he can't leave the room, and he decides, you know what, I'm going to lay down here with you guys. And as he lays down, even before he's settled down, his boy comes crawling off the top bunk to come lay on the floor with him. And it's so sweet. It's so sweet. Like, the boys are taking care of him. He doesn't recognize that, but they're taking care of him more than he's taking care of them. Yeah. And then there's the very sort of last, there's a huge crane shot towards the end of the movie. There's been a car accident in front of the Tenenbaum house. And this crane shot pans down from the fire department that's there, from the tipped over mailbox, the car accident where the boys have sadly lost their dog. And Royal talks to Chaz, and Chaz just looks up and says, it's been a really hard year.
Mm-hmm.
I've never, like, I don't think Ben Stiller's a bad actor. Wouldn't say that. But I was not expecting to be hit so emotionally with that character. And it really, really, like, that really hits. And then, of course, the other one would be Richie. I don't think I will ever be able to hear Elliott Smith's Needle in the Hay without picturing this suicide attempt scene that happens.
Yeah.
And it's an incredibly powerful scene. It's the world is artificial. We see Richie shaving his beard, taking off his mask, looking at himself in the mirror. And then he says, seemingly out of nowhere, "I'm going to kill myself tomorrow." And then instantly slashes his wrists.
Mm-hmm.
So strange and impactful. And on the other side of this, we have Dudley and Bill Murray in the next room. Bill Murray's doing this study on this weird kid Dudley who's probably got every single disorder all at once, you know? And in the backdrop, they're playing that for sort of kind of fun humor, but because Dudley's kind of an enigma, I don't feel like it's condescending or making fun of anything. But I also find it horrifying that it's Dudley who finds Richie.
Yeah.
So again, like, there's lots of sweetness and there's lots of sour, and together it all kind of stews and brews together. I guess you can tell, fucking love the Royal Tenenbaums. I love the soundtrack, I love the cast, I love pretty much everything about the movie. It doesn't exist in the real world, but it makes me feel real feelings.
Yeah, and all of the crazy situations and are, you know, I guess culminate in real life emotion, right? I mean, how fucked up would you be if you had to admit out loud that you were in love with your sister?
Yeah.
I mean, yes, they're not related by blood, but they were brought up as siblings. So, you know, and Eli says it to Margot, you know, that's, what does he say? He says, that's fucking weird.
Yeah. No, I know. And how is it resolved? She says, "I guess we're just going to have to be secretly in love with each other."
And leave it at that, Richie. Yeah. 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 But, you know, I guess they can, saying it out loud and, you know, having everybody know.
Clearing the air.
Clearing the air lets them move on.
Mm-hmm.
But and just the little tent Richie has set up with his record player and his little bunk in there. Yeah, it's just, it's heartbreaking.
Yeah. You can sort of see that they haven't really grown up in a lot of ways. There's a weird fascination that Hollywood seems to have with the, you know, emotional malaise of incredibly wealthy people, right? We always care about, you know, movies like Harold and Maude or Igby Goes Down or The Royal Tenenbaums. There are all these people that, at the end of the day, they're never going to starve. They're never not going to have a really, really comfortable place to live. They're never, like, the day-to-day shit that most people are waist deep in never touches them. They don't even fucking know it exists. But for some reason, as entertainment, we seem to enjoy knowing that rich people suffer this ennui as well, even though it's to a very different degree. This might be guilty of being one of those, but if it is, it's the best of them.
Oh, and I just wanted to also mention the funeral scene when Royal does end up dying of a heart attack, and the funeral scene is one of my favorites. You have Ari and Uzi get to shoot off their little BB guns, and the family gives him the false epitaph he's always wanted, you know. So kind of sums up his life in a lovely way.
And you got the Van Morrison playing.
Yeah.
There's only so much I can do with traditional orthodontics. Justin, are you ready to let go of your thumb? Why are you talking like that?
Some are long to find themselves breaking out.
I want to try hypnosis. Imagine you're deep in the forest. Call on your power animal.
Come here.
Do it in your mind.
Being the mother of a 17-year-old is a trip. You're supposed to have all the answers, and you only have one.
97% of the
If you want to admire Rebecca, do that during recess.
Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, classic hyperactive teen.
But it's not that simple.
Maybe it is.
No, you should see it. He wears this tie.
Do you see the girls out there?
Yeah.
Okay, go round them up. Bring them in here.
Men's room.
That's okay. I'm a teacher.
Liberté, égalité, fraternité.
So earlier we were talking about Benny and Joon, and I was making a case that almost all the characters in that movie were mentally ill, in some respect or another. I think this movie, Thumbsucker, is definitely the same thing is at work here. Our focus is this 17-year-old boy who can't seem to quit sucking his thumb, and the various outlets he goes to try and cure himself of this childish oral fixation. That goes to a strangely zen marathon-running dentist, played by Keanu Reeves. His mom, who seems to be quietly obsessed with a TV star. His dad, who was like a wounded ex-athlete, who, because his knee went out on him, was sort of forced to make severe changes and sort of live with his life being haunted by the better life he might have had. And there are other characters that we can get into as well. I think most interesting maybe Benjamin Bratt. But I guess the question I ask is like, or the movie is asking, and it's based off of a novel, which I'm going to assume is asking the same question, is that, is it okay that the 17-year-old is sucking his thumb? Because not to jump right to the thesis, but the moral of the story says, if sucking the thumb makes you feel better, go ahead and do it.
Yeah, that does seem to kind of be the the takeaway. And I don't even know what I think about that, to be honest.
Exactly. That's sort of my question about the movie. There's a lot to like in the movie, but the moral of the story is, ignore it, it'll go away. There's also an unpleasant little sort of subplot about him being medicated.
Yeah.
And it dramatically changing his character, and then him cold turkey getting rid of the medication, which, if you know anything about mental illness, is just, there's no quirk or fun or charm about that. People die. People die.
The mom has one line where she says, something like, "Oh, that's not healthy," but it's left at that.
Yeah. No, people who are severely mentally ill who go off their meds end up decapitating strangers on buses.
Oh, God, yeah.
I hate to be glib about it because that's a true thing that happened, but the other side of the coin is a lot of people are over-medicated and end up losing who they are. I mean, that's another question, another tough thing about mental illness. If you're losing your personality with your medication, is it worth it? If you lose who you are in order to stay, quote, normal, to fit into the whatever world the world considers normal today, if you're losing who you are, is it worth it? None of these questions are directly asked in Thumbsucker, and now maybe that's a slight against it. But again, I think much like the other movies we've been talking about, it wants to be a charming sort of warm dramedy. And I think it is a charming, mainly warm dramedy. I just don't know if I buy the moral of the story. I think that I relate to the Vincent D'Onofrio character. He's much rougher and gruffer. He's kind of like a jock dude. His approach to things isn't what my approach would be. But it seems like he earnestly loves his family, and he really wants to get his son to stop sucking his thumb because it's what a child does. It's it's something that's going to, in his mind, hold him back or make people think less of him, and by proxy, think less of his father, right? So there are times where the D'Onofrio character comes off as quite gruff. But at the same time, the Tilda Swinton character, and Tilda Swinton's an actress who I love, it also seems at times a little bit checked out as a mom. I mean, she's really into this Benjamin Bratt TV star and trying to enter this contest where she can win a date with him. And she loves her son and supports her son, but he seems to be in the background of whatever soap opera is going on in her head. So nobody's nerfed in this movie. And I like that about it, but I can't sort of put my finger on, what I'm supposed to take from it. Mm-hmm. Should I just dismiss it as another one of these sort of quirky dramedies, Or is it telling me that if you have a mental illness or if you have a character quirk, as long as it's relatively harmless and it brings you comfort, don't fight it?
Yeah, I don't know what it's saying. I guess it's just maybe encouraging us all to take the road to self-discovery. I don't know. Because, well, he kind of, learns that he can be different kinds of people, right? He gets on the Ritalin or whatever they give him to make him focus, and he ends up excelling on the debate team, which he never thought he would be able to do. And then, of course, that, is unsustainable. And then he tries to get with Rebecca, the girl who ends up hanging out with the stoner kids. So then he goes to discover what life is like on pot, and then, kind of gets her through that journey because he discovers that she's only experimenting with him and would never even consider a real relationship. Yeah. And that's really painful. And, then I guess it's I don't know, maybe it's just the road. It's just the road.
It's the journey. It's the journey, not the destination. And I've made that defense of movies too. And there's lots of just tiny moments in the movie that I love. A 12-year-old kid asking him what Kelly Garner's pussy feels like.
Yeah,
Jesus Christ.
The little brother was awesome, and incredibly profound things would come out of his mouth, but it was still believable as kid things to say. Yeah, I thought the brother was great.
I sort of look at he's going to all these different places trying to figure shit out, right? The debate club I think he mainly got into because he was interested in Kelly Garner, who's interestingly also going to be the romantic interest in Lars and the Real Girl, which we're going to be talking about right away here. So yeah, he that one he just sort of made that decision tactically, but for the most part we're seeing him going to different places and trying to deal with things. You can go to this sort of Zen mantra meditative place, which Keanu Reeves kind of represents. You can just sort of tough it out, which is what his dad kind of represents. And then there's just chill and let the world swim by, which is what the sort of potheads would kind of say. But in the end, it's sort of like everybody has their own medication that they take, quote unquote, be it drugs, be it the debate team, be it something that they do to distract themselves. And once he sort of learns that everybody has their own quirk, his just happens to be thumb sucking, and he realizes that his parents, most people have figured that out before they're 17, are not perfect, but they're quite far from perfect. They love him, they're good people, they're doing the best they can by him, but they are just as fucked and flawed as everybody else. And that's a bitter pill for a young person to kind of deal with. It maybe the adults don't have all the answers because all the answers aren't there. So, it's rich themes that they get into. I want to talk about Benjamin Bratt. It's this sort of, what do you take of that sort of Tilda Swinton angle in the story where there's something, you get the feeling like D'Onofrio's pretty sure she's having an affair and she's obsessed with this TV star and really wants to look attractive to him. In the end, it's almost like ends up taking care of Benjamin Bratt in the way she should be taking care of her family. There's a weird story where he tells the son, who he just thinks is a juvie kid, he doesn't realize that he's talking about the kid's mom, that he thinks of her as a guardian angel because she helped him retrieve some drugs that got stuck up his ass once upon a time. And that, she's helping him get clean, and she's taking him under her wing in some way. It's a strange relationship that they have, but it's not what we thought it was. Where does that fit into the tapestry for you?
Yeah, I don't know. It's I got the feeling as a mom, she clearly loves her family also, but there's always the thought of having a little more excitement in your life, or having unfulfilled dreams, that the desire for that. And when she actually gets to get into a place professionally where she can interact with her the object of her imaginary affection, then it kind of that'll feed something in her. But we do get to see that she is a professional and she does take her job seriously. She's not just a stalker. But
she's a percentage of stalker, but she's not really. She may be, what do they call it, emotionally cheating? Or
yeah, I don't know. I think everybody can have I guess we can kind of have compartmentalize her emotional needs. I don't know.
I appreciate that Tilda Swinton's totally willing to give us a flawed character. Same that we like. Like, I still like her in spite of all the... Same thing with Vincent D'Onofrio. Like I said, he comes off as a bit of a bully sometimes, but I really think he means well.
Yeah.
And that again, that warmth comes through. And it really helps these movies that are sort of tackling tough issues. But
there was one line in the movie that I didn't really, kind of came out of nowhere. Like, the son is talking to, I think it was talking to the dentist, to Keanu Reeves, or maybe not, I don't know. But the son says that if I weren't her son, I wouldn't even figure in her world, kind of thing. Right. Like, I didn't really understand where that was coming from, or do you remember the scene that I'm talking about?
Well, I specifically, I'm not sure who he was talking to, but like, I hear what he's saying, and that he feels like his mom's more interested in everything else except for him. She loves him, but like, he'll be fine. You're good. You're fine. And she's sort of looking at her own sort of area of the... But it would make sense for a woman in her early 40s to have no interest in a 17-year-old that didn't belong to her. Right? Like, why would she give a shit about some random 17-year-old? She should give a shit about her son, and she does. She's just not very good at showing it.
It kind of came across to me like a comment about, cool kids and not cool kids. You know what I mean? I don't know. It kind of took me out of it for a second. I was that's weird.
She thinks that he's not cool enough for her.
That's what it sounded like. I don't know.
He definitely seems a little bit hostile to his mom. Like, he feeds a lot of the demon to his dad. There's that scene where they're cleaning the garage, and he's like, you know that she's not happy, and you know that all she cares about is this stupid contest. And D'Onofrio acknowledges it. Yeah, I know that she's unhappy, and it's a really difficult thing to deal with, but I don't know what to do. She's my wife. We have this family. We're doing the best we can. And I think that's maybe the moral of the story. Everybody's doing the best that they can. And to the movie's credit, it doesn't give you any easy answers. He doesn't get the girl, and he shouldn't. That girl's kind of a bitch.
Yeah, totally.
And, but again, I fall back on, is it okay for a 17-year-old to suck his thumb? Would I be okay with my sons at the age of 17 sucking their thumbs with this strange oral fixation? Like, I can't help but think that as a parent, I would feel like I'd fucked up if I wasn't at least trying to help them deal with that. But is that my own shit? Let him suck his thumb. I chew my nails. I'm fucking 41 and I chew my nails. So
yeah, that is a fine line, isn't it? Why can you chew your nails and not suck your thumb? Never thought of it that way before. But yeah, I don't know. The one thing that, do they address whether or not, because I mean, he's trying to stop sucking his thumb because of society and because of his father, but does he want to stop sucking his thumb? Like, aside from having the self-soothing and how it makes him feel, like, does he think it's weird himself? I don't think the movie even addresses that.
It's costing him serious points socially, and it's concerning his family. So for that reason, he wants to stop. But it provides a comfort. He wouldn't be doing it if it didn't provide him a comfort, right?
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean...
And then, the other tactic that he said that I almost glossed over was, of course, the medication. And the medication seemed to be helpful, but it seemed to transform him.
Yeah. Yeah, he kind of became a little tyrant, a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, like, in the interest of treating thumb sucking, to, that seems pretty dramatic. It's treating a mosquito bite with a shotgun,
Yeah.
The movie's not asking those questions. I think they're just showing him all these different tactics that he's trying to take to deal with this problem, which in the end maybe isn't a problem.
Yeah.
I finish where I begin. Like, I don't know where I land on this thumb-sucking thing. I guess I'm part of the jaded reality that thinks that grown people sucking their thumbs is weird, but while I'm thinking about that, I'm chewing on my nails.
Yeah. I think it's weird too, but I don't know if I think it should be weird or not. Yeah, I don't know.
It's worth the discussion, and it's worth the watch. It'll probably end up more in the middle to me in this list, but I did not regret my time with Thumbsucker at all. Good enough?
Good enough.
My little brother is crazy, right? I mean, he's crazy.
If I may, he appears to have a delusion.
What the hell is he doing with a delusion? She loves kids. Fantastic. When will it be over?
When he doesn't need it anymore.
We gotta fix him. Can you fix him?
Bianca's in town for a reason. This isn't necessarily a bad thing.
How can we help?
Go along with it.
This must be Bianca. Well, welcome.
It can be communication. It can be a way to work something out. Chances are he's been decompensating for some time.
We don't want anything to do with her.
What's the big deal?
She's a missionary. That's good, isn't it?
Hey, what are you doing on Friday? I was just thinking that maybe we could all go out.
Does she have a sister?
Wish I had a woman that couldn't talk.
I don't care.
Lars, we do care.
No, you don't.
That is just not true. Every person in this town bends over backwards to make Bianca feel at home. We do it for you.
So Lars and the Real Girl, like so many other movies on this list, runs on an engine of charm. And it does have a lot of charm in it, I do agree. And it's hard to say anything bad about a movie which I believe is so well-intentioned. I do think it means well, and it's portraying a world where mental illness is taken seriously by an entire community. An entire community embraces a man who is severely mentally ill. It's a fantasy. The movie might as well be shelved by The Lord of the Rings and Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, we're going to disagree about this one, I think.
Lars is living in the garage next to it, where the house where he grew up. He's got a lot of issues. He finds out through an acquaintance at work that you can order living dolls, and he does, and he treats her like an actual girlfriend. I think that the entire illusion of the movie could be easily destroyed if A, the central character wasn't played by Ryan Dreamboat Gosling, and B, if he was actually fucking that doll. Because here's the thing, putting one foot back in the real world, mental illness isn't cute all of the time, right? There's something adorable about Lars, and there's something adorable about the way he pretends that this is a real girl. And there's something adorable about the way everybody supports and embraces it. I love where the heart of the movie's at, but it feels to me like that old show West Wing, where it was portraying the world as the most naive leftist person would believe it to be. Like, wouldn't it be nice if people were this compassionate? Wouldn't it be nice if people, treated people who were mentally ill with this measure of respect? I like the acting in it. I like the cast. And it's a tough premise to sell. And considering what a tough premise it is, it works way more than it shouldn't. But I can't help but feel like this is the least attached to the real world of any of the 6 movies, including the Royal Tenenbaums. That's where I start with Lars and the Real Girl. I'm sorry.
No. I agree, but I disagree at the same time.
Okay.
With the fact that it's so detached from the real world, because it is, but I choose to view it from the idea that people can surprise you, and even though it's totally implausible that the whole community would get together and, go along with Lars's delusion. It's implausible, but people can surprise you, and it is a small town in Iowa or wherever, and they're just getting along, and it's one of those things where if you have the weird guy who lives down the street, pretty soon he's just the guy who lives down the street. I mean, that shit happens, and
getting used. Sorry.
No, that's okay.
Getting used to Lars, I understand. Like obviously he's part of the community. They know that. Lars ordering a sex doll and parading her around town, and everybody being okay with it—that's a step. Then them coming over to Lars' house to pick up his doll to take her out to get her hair done, right? Then when he believes she's getting sick, he calls an ambulance, and the ambulance comes and takes his sex doll to the hospital.
Yeah.
And he visits his sex doll in the hospital, and it's one thing to sort of support the delusion, and the movie sells this remarkably well because it sounds like a ridiculous premise, but while you're watching the movie, you do go with it. I like a lot about the movie. I just, again, I'm working with this theme as mental illness as entertainment. And I just think the real world Lars would be this incredibly, incredibly lonely, frustrated dude. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing overly rude about him. He just doesn't seem to deal well with other people. You get the feeling like he kind of likes that Kelly Garner, who's playing a much more likable character in this movie than she did in something Thumbsucker. But that there's a wall, an invisible wall that is between them that he imagines will always be there. And the wall doesn't come down until he lets go of his girlfriend, this sex doll.
Right. Well, his delusion stems from, past traumas and stuff, and he doesn't like physical contact, and all this, I guess, kind of comes out because he brings Bianca, the doll, to the doctor because his brother and sister-in-law encouraged him to bring the doll kind of as a guise of getting him some help, because obviously they're worried about his mental health. And Patricia Clarkson, I think, is just wonderful as the doctor / therapist. She's got such a soothing demeanor.
Yeah.
I would want her to be my therapist.
No, she's just incredibly compassionate.
Yeah.
And in such a way as to make it feel contagious. You wish you could be that compassionate.
Yeah. But I mean, just everybody going along with it, I didn't think it was that far off. I didn't think it was that implausible. Just because of the way the story progressed and the situation developed. I mean, yeah.
I guess
I went with it.
My cynical side comes out here. This is small town middle America. This is Trump country. Well, and,
that's not fair.
That's not fair, Larry. But I have to believe there'd be one or two of the people that would see him walking around with this sex doll and say,
and his brother
that.
His brother does express that. He knows that people are going to laugh at him, and they kind of do at the beginning.
At first. But he's just embraced. The entire community mourns Bianca. There's the really charming scene where they bathe Bianca and they just start laughing because of how silly.
Yeah. Well, I thought that, because at the end of that scene she ends up face down in the tub, and I thought Lars was going to come in and
freak out.
They were drowning her or something.
It could have really easily been creepy. It really, really could have.
Well, and I mean, it was a little uncomfortable when he does end up kissing her down by the water. That was kind of weird. So yeah, I'm glad that he didn't end up having sex with his doll. But
well, and again, my cynicism, real world, says if this story took place in the real world, he was fucking that doll.
I don't know. I mean, and
But that's the line too, right? If he was intimate with that doll, the whole illusion would fall apart, right? Everything charming and sweet about it would completely vanish, right? And if it wasn't, this wasn't portrayed so well. I keep just blanked on his name. Sorry, Ryan Gosling with the weird mustache and the charming little smile. What if he was like this fat, scuzzy, shady looking dude with a wandering eye? It's just like all the stars aligned to make this guy like the most adorable, insane person. Right?
I don't know. I don't feel that way about it.
I hate to come off as such a cynic. And again, the movie's just trying to put a smile on your face. That's all it's trying to do. And I want a world where this is true. I want a world where, small town America, a guy orders a sex doll because he's that tragically lonely. And despite the fact that he takes it out on the town, nobody gives him any shit about it. In fact, it's embraced almost without question. Like, that would be great. It would also be great if we had time machines. It would also be great if I could ride a dinosaur. But this is just not the world that we live in.
Okay, so how about the real world situations? So Lars doesn't he can't handle human contact, and the sister-in-law is really well-meaning, and she's trying to help him, but she's constantly, at one point she even tackles him to the ground, and ends up laying on top of him because she wants him to come to dinner or whatever, and she's really trying her hardest to get him out of his shell and everything like that. And however well-meaning that is, that's like the worst thing that she could be doing to this guy, and Bianca's not going to do that to him. She can't touch him without without his consent. So
it's a relationship with himself.
Yeah.
Like, all of Bianca's side of the conversation, or indeed arguments, because they start fighting, are all coming from his head. This is Norman Bates shit, right? Like,
but he's working shit out, though. All this is working shit out.
How about I ask you this? Maybe this is the question that I'm trying to get to. When it comes down to it, does Lars know that Bianca's a sex doll?
Yes, he does.
Yes, he does.
Yes, he does.
So, it's not healthy. Like, maybe this is some sort of self-therapy, but it's a strange place to be. We've landed in a strange place with Lars. It's a good thing that he's harmless and cute, because if he wasn't, he could be the next Jeffrey Dahmer.
No, but he knows Bianca's a doll, but he doesn't, but it's still a delusion, right? It's not like every day he's saying, oh, today I'm going to pretend that this doll is real. Yeah. It's more nuanced than that.
He would have had to give his credit card information to some sleazy internet site, and he would have had to unpack her and, dress her.
Yeah, but while you're doing that, that can be, that's an easy adjustment.
Getting to know your face.
In your brain, he's paying for her plane ticket, and he's helping her unpack her bags. Yeah. Like, that's easy stuff to get around,
Maybe this quite charming comedy was a missed opportunity to be a quite terrifying horror movie.
Actually, all of these could, you change one thing in Benny and Joon.
Yeah.
When he falls off the window, if he doesn't break his ankle, if he smashes in his skull instead, that's a different movie, right?
We find out the reason that the Johnny Depp character just showed up like a layup about time is he's running from a murder rap.
Yeah.
I don't know why I react this way to Lars, because I do like the movie is the thing, Mick. Like, I enjoyed watching it. It's just watching it through this filter of how we treat mental illness in films. It just seems a little Disney to me. I think that its heart is in the right place. I really do. But I don't think this is what mental illness typically looks like. And I don't think this is what the reaction to mental illness is, as nice as that would be.
Yeah. I don't know. Sometimes I think that wish fulfillment can be healthy.
Hey, and that's what movies are for in a lot of ways. Yeah. They give us answers where there are none, It's the line in Grand Canyon Steve Martin gives, all of life's riddles are answered in the movies.
Yeah.
Yes and no. I mean, this is posing some questions, and I think it's a warm, nice, feely movie. But I don't know that it's a serious take on mental illness. I think it's kind of a whimsical, fantastical comedy. And taken as that, great, enjoy. But yeah, I don't think I learned anything too deep about mental illness. Maybe a little bit about how we react to it, but not about illness itself.
Well, no, and I mean, if you're looking at, as far as severity of different mental illnesses, this one, is on the less severe end of the spectrum, right? So, I mean, there's that too.
In the end of the day, his illness is that he's really, 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 really lonely.
Well, no, that's
oversimplification.
Yeah, oversimplification. But I mean, he was never. I don't think he's, a danger to himself or anybody else, or anything like that. But there was also that. You see his character evolve, and when he starts actually communicating with the girl at his office with the Margot character, he kind of, you see him come out of his shell a little bit, and there's that really adorable teddy bear resuscitation scene. When she's had her feelings hurt by the meanie in the office who hung her bear.
He hung her teddy bear, a little bastard.
Yeah.
No. And the meet cute stuff at the office, I kind of liked the weird nerdy vibe that Kelly Garner was giving off. Like, she wasn't a confident person, but her feet were much more on the ground than Lars were, and maybe together they could figure something out. Like, it's fun. I feel like I've been mean to it. I do like the movie. I do. I just I got to rank them from 6 to 1. So I guess I was a little harder on Lars. Is there anything else you want to say about Lars?
Nope.
Ryan Gosling's dreamy.
What meds are you on?
I used to be on lithium and Seroquel.
I was on Xanax.
You ever take Klonopin?
Klonopin, yeah.
Like, is it what?
I'm tired. I want to go. Are you going to walk me home or what?
You have poor social skills. You have a problem.
I have a problem? You say more inappropriate things than appropriate things.
Doc, she's crazy.
Hey!
Whoa, what the hell? She knew where I was. She followed me.
Then why don't you run somewhere else?
Calm down, crazy.
Maybe she just needs a friend.
You want to have dinner at this diner?
Pick me up at 7:30.
So how's your job?
I just got fired, actually.
Oh, really? How?
By having sex with everybody in the office.
Everybody?
I was very depressed after Tommy died.
We don't have to talk about it.
Thanks.
How many were there?
Oh, she's a mess. You gotta be careful. She does a lot of therapy.
I go to a lot of therapy. Am I messed up? I just gotta get a strategy,
Me too.
So there's this dance thing. I can only do it if I have a partner.
Oh, I'm not gonna dance with you.
So is this the girl you wrote about?
You wrote about me?
She's fine.
She is my friend with an F.
A capital F.
She's fine.
For friend.
What are you so up about?
I'm happy. Look, I'm my best self today, and I think she's her best self, and that's a good thing.
Lost in my mind. Lost in my mind. Oh, I know you don't want to listen to your father. I didn't listen to mine. But when life reaches out at a moment like this, it's a sin if you don't reach back.
This is what I believe to be true. You have to do everything you can. And if you stay positive, you have a shot at a silver lining.
I'm never going to win.
Not with that attitude. Not with that attitude. Silver Linings Playbook from David O. Russell, who's a director that I do like, but a person that I would never want to meet.
I don't know anything about him.
He directed a film called Three Kings, George Clooney, Flirting with Disaster, I Heart Huckabees.
Oh.
So, and this one, obviously. The Fighter is what he got his Oscars for. He's an interesting director, but if you go online, ironically, in a previous film he did that had a lot to do with mental health, I Heart Huckabees, on the set he lost his fucking mind on Lily Tomlin. You can see him just screaming and throwing shit and swearing and being this complete monster to one of the great American treasures that we have. I heard that he'd sort of made this Silver Lining Playbooks movie as a way to express his relationship with a family member who suffers from similar illnesses. And as far as I'm concerned, he's making this because I believe David O. Russell's probably, if not bipolar, suffering from something. Like, he's a really creative guy. He's a smart guy. He makes really cool movies a lot of the time. But I think that he's a handful. And I think Silver Linings Playbook, on one hand, is trying to take an honest, fairly honest look at a lower end of mental illness. This is more obsessive compulsive bipolar than it is schizophrenia or some sort of like serious personality disorder. But what a huge weight that can put not just on your life, but on your families.
Yeah.
The interesting thing about Silver Linings Playbook, which is a movie that I like a lot, is that this should be a movie that I hate. Because
why is that?
This is a story about two wounded people that find each other, enter a dance competition, and through it become better people.
Also sports.
Also sports. But the movie is so much better than that premise would suggest, and has a lot of surprises to the left and right. Bradley Cooper and Jennifer Lawrence are sort of the focus, but I also really want to give a lot of attention to Jackie Weaver and Robert De Niro as the parents. Mm-hmm. And I just want to say thank you to Silver Linings Playbook for giving me a movie starring with Chris Tucker in it where I don't fucking hate Chris Tucker.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a fine actor, but there's no artifice to this performance. There's nothing shrill or over the top comedy about it. He's just delivering an earnest performance, which is great to see. So, I guess to start with you, as I'll say, in spite of all of these sort of cliched beats in the movie, I think it works and quite well. How is that possible? What is it about Silver Lining Playbooks that makes it overcome what seems like to be just another sort of cliched romance? Or does it for you? I guess I shouldn't put words in your mouth.
No, it does. It does. I liked it too. Yeah, I don't know. I guess the dialogue's more interesting than in a run-of-the-mill comedy, and there is a concrete reason for the dance competition. And and we have conversations and character development while they're training for the dance competition, and and the family dynamics are pretty interesting. I thought that the manic episodes were pretty well done, like the scene where Pat is looking for his wedding video. Mm-hmm. And wakes up the whole household, the whole neighborhood, really, if that's the same scene. Yeah. But just well done and realistic, I think.
It's really, Bradley Cooper comes home after a stay in a mental health facility, and he's still obsessed with sort of getting his ex-wife back. And everybody seems to quietly understand that that's not going to happen, but he hasn't come to terms with it yet. We also see in his father some of the quirks and some similar issues that might suggest where some of his mental illnesses come from. They both have things that they're strangely obsessive about, but it doesn't exactly sugarcoat. Like, he's reading all of the books that his ex-wife is teaching, her curriculum, to try and get himself, I guess, in the same headspace as what she's reading or whatever, to somehow tie himself to her. And he has a furious breakdown about this Steinbeck book, was it? Or I can't remember what the novel was. But he wakes up his parents and he throws the book through a window and just becomes a complete lunatic. And his parents are so exhausted and exasperated. And you'd expect them to say, shut the fuck up and go to bed, right? Like, that would seem to be the knee-jerk reaction. But what you see is such weary compassion on their faces. Like, they know that their son's not well. They know that he doesn't fully get how inappropriate what he's doing is doing. He's just reacting on a big feeling that he's having right now. And they have to weather the storm. And so many people have to weather that storm. And it's so rarely shown in a movie. It's moments like that that really connect.
Yeah, and this is another one of those situations where you were saying before that, people don't want to take their medication because they don't feel like themselves and they get bloated and they're, everything is kind of fuzzy. And so, yeah, but this is what happens when you don't take your medication.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think the performances go a long way to salvage kind of the familiar structure. I think that if you didn't have your De Niro and your Jennifer Lawrence and your Bradley Coopers in there, I think a weaker cast might not have held this up. But I think that because it's a personal story to David O. Russell, obviously, I find it interesting that even within his explanation of it, he's putting it off on another person. George Clooney punched this guy in the face, okay?
Seriously?
George Clooney.
Before.
On the set, apparently, of Three Kings, he was being so belligerent to the extras that George Clooney lost his temper with them and they got physical. Wow. He said even though Three Kings is one of the favorite movies of his that he's done, he wouldn't work with David O. Russell again. So he's a difficult guy, but he knows that he's a difficult guy, I guess, right? And even though he might be masking it as it being about a family member that he knows who suffers from similar things, I think it's bold of him to tackle it. The romance between Bradley Cooper and Jennifer Lawrence is kind of interesting. There's a age gap which is sort of recognized there, but it's kind of a Benny and Joon thing where this guy's broken and fucked up, she's broken and fucked up. They'll be perfect together.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
But I think they have this sort of formal structure thing. They're almost dragged into this relationship. On some level, he knows there's going to be a relationship here, and on some level, she knows there's going to be a relationship here. But they have to meet and do these dance classes and keep a safe distance until it just magically happens, inevitably. We see it coming, they see it coming, but it's still satisfying.
That was, if the relationship, I guess what the relationship is built on is kind of like what I consider the weak part of the movie. I don't know if I couldn't decide if the movie wants us to think that she really did get the letter from Nikki, but as soon as it was typewritten, I kind of, right away, I was like, oh, she wrote that letter.
And that's not cool.
But I don't know, did the movie care if we thought that or not? I couldn't decide later.
The movie didn't call her on it because it became more of a win that Bradley Cooper cared less about the note than it did about the note being a lie.
Yeah.
I think. That's my take on it. I'm not telling you what to think.
Yeah, and then later on at the, I thought the dance competition and so they've made a bet about the Eagles and then they've parlayed the dance competition into that bet, and it's really high stakes, and that's another issue with the family is that, the Robert De Niro character, aside from he's got a sports book, and aside from his superstitions that he's dragging his whole family into, he really bets the farm and can lose everything, right? So I guess that's what kind of makes it exciting. But I really enjoyed those scenes, like seeing the, oh, we've won the game, and then they have their quirky little dance scene, and then having won the bet. That was...
I like that they won the bet just barely. The whole thing was they failed in the competition, but they scored just enough so that they would win the bet. So they were celebrating this huge, not so lukewarm scores, and everybody else in the building is completely confused. You guys just got a pretty mediocre score, and you're acting like you just won something. And sometimes there's something to be said for celebrating the failures. I know that was a victory for them, but no, they didn't become great dancers all of a sudden. They didn't even necessarily become better dancers, but they're healthier for having done this dance competition.
Yeah.
But as I say that out loud, it's just so fucking cheesy, right?
I didn't like how the ending of the start of their relationship maybe then was handled, because Nikki did in fact come to the dance competition. So, I guess we're the Jennifer Lawrence character thinks that he's walking towards his ex-wife, and he leads in and whispers in her ear, and so of course Jennifer Lawrence mistakes this for, oh no, he's going back to his wife, blah blah blah, and then of course he runs after her and expresses his love for her. But I mean, you gotta know, as a guy, he could have just turned to her and said, hey, hang on a second, I'll be right back. That didn't really, that kind of found that part a little annoying. Because I mean, as an audience member, we know that he's not telling in his wife's ear, he's not saying, oh, I'm so glad you came, can we get back together? We know he's saying, actually, I'm doing really well, I'm gonna go run after this girl, or whatever, I got
places to be. He's no longer stuck in that place where his life is meaningless unless he repairs that relationship. He's got other things he can focus on. So that's a win for him. I think what you're saying is just that's one of those conventional romantic comedy things, The girl thinks she's lost the guy. She's walking away all teary and upset, presumably to go home and swallow a bunch of pills or something. Right? And then, lo and behold, the guy shows up and it's all sweet. There is a little bit of saccharine to this movie, but it's delivered in a really good package. Like I say, the performances are good, and it's the sincerity. It's like it didn't feel, it feels more genuine than Lars and the Real Girl, because it's not the whole community. It's just the family that has that commitment to putting up with this illness, no matter what it presents. The rest of the world almost kind of disappears to the left and right. That's the curse of mental illness. You can be lost to depression or to delusion for years before your head comes out, and you can actively start participating in the world outside of your own head. I heard it said somewhere that, if you're having a really bad manic state, the thing you have to try to remember is that in the end of the day, right now, you're just a person in a room making themselves crazy. So sometimes you just need to get out of the room and go to a dance competition or a sport game, or a sport game. That's great, Larry. A baseball game, and listen to good advice when it's presented. A lot of the times, especially if you're ill, the right advice just hits your ears as so wrong. But as De Niro says, when life presents something to you, you have to grab it. It's a sin if you don't. And that's on the nose. Yeah, that might be a little bit Disney, but it gave me the feels while I was watching it. So it's another win for David O. Russell. I don't think it's his masterpiece, but I think it's rock solid. Anything else you want to say? Right.
I like the scenes with Dr. Patel. I thought he was pretty awesome, and I like that he played that Stevie Wonder Trigger song in the office just to see if it was still a trigger, and yep, sure was.
Afraid so.
yeah, I liked him.
And like the outbursts, especially the Bradley Cooper outbursts, again, they're sort of safe mental illness outbursts, and maybe it would be less, again, digestible if he wasn't as dreamy looking as Bradley Cooper. But
yes, see, yeah, agree.
But I think that the movie, again, it's the well-intentionedness of the movie. One of these days Hollywood's going to start casting normal-looking people, but we're not there yet. But I like that when he had the flip out in the room or the waiting room of his doctor's office. Yeah, it was an outburst, and yeah, it was over the line, but nobody needed to call the police. Everyone just looked at him like, holy shit, dude.
Yeah.
I like this movie a lot. Thank you so much, Mireille, for coming back to the podcast and Skyping all the way from far off romantic Edmonton, Alberta. It's nice to see you again. I'm sorry you've been looking at a frozen image of me all of this time. It must be really boring for you.
No, it's all right.
But I think you and I are, let's be sure, everybody's a little bit mentally ill, but I think on the spectrum, you and I are doing okay, right?
We're doing all right.
I mean, I'm sane enough for a middle-aged man, I guess. But I'm sort of fascinated by the idea of what normal is, especially after my son was diagnosed with autism and reading books about the autism spectrum. Sometimes you kind of feel like everybody's a little bit on the spectrum. Mm-hmm. It's just some people register on the spectrum in an area that we call normal.
Yeah.
Some people have better communication skills, some people have less communication skills, some people have different triggers, but we're all people and we're all mentally ill and in some way or another. I honestly do think it's the plague of our modern age. We're not hunter-gatherers anymore. We're not out there worried about, being eaten by lions. Now all of a sudden, the enemies are coming from within.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know what the answer is, and no one does, but I'm increasingly skeptical that pills are the answer sometimes. Maybe for some people they are, maybe they aren't, but it's a tough...
I think it's a part of the answer.
Yeah. It's a tough issue, and I think that's why maybe Hollywood has a hard time with it. Like I said, I was maybe a little bit hard on some of these films because I was looking at it through that lens. I want to say again before we do our ranks, all of these movies are thumbs up reviews. I sort of based my scale on how well they address specifically mental illness. If we were ranking these movies on how charming they were or as romantic comedies, it might be different. I'm fascinated to hear what your list is. What was your least favorite of these 6 movies and why?
My number 6 was Benny and Joon. And I did like this movie. I found it charming, and I liked a lot of the performances. It was, fun to see Oliver Platt, and Mary Stuart Masterson was good in it. Johnny Depp was pretty good in it. But yeah, I guess in the end it was just because it was, just didn't have as much depth, as my opinion, as the other movies, and that whole feeling I got that the movie was saying, that love can solve your problems,
it's a little Disney.
In mental health that was a little much. So that's why it's number 6.
Fair enough.
Number 5, I put Thumbsucker. I liked this movie a lot, found it really interesting, but I guess and there are a lot of scenes in it that I really enjoyed. We didn't even talk about the scene where Justin convinces his brother to come and distract Keanu Reeves while he's riding his bike and causes him to crash. Yeah, just because he's upset that he's kind of, that Keanu Reeves has hypnotized him and made his thumb taste like echinacea.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, I did enjoy a lot of scenes, but I guess the middle part of the movie where he's on Ritalin and stuff, I just found less engaging.
Right.
Number 4 is What's Eating Gilbert Grape for me. And again, these are all really good, movies. I think the movie is fantastic. Maybe it's because it's one of the older ones, so the story was a little less fresh for me. I don't know. I can't really say why my 4, 3, 2, 1 are all. I really like all of them. So
right.
So it ended up being number 4.
It gets tricky. Yeah.
Yeah. Number 3, Silver Linings Playbook. Again, thought it was great, but we just had the conversation about the romantic comedy tropes that kind of stuck out for me. But yeah, again, really strong scenes, good acting. Number 2, Lars and the Real Girl.
Oh, wow.
And I found, you just said, wow, like you can't believe. How could that possibly be? No, I totally embraced the kind of magical quality of the community trying to help Lars out and going along with the delusion. To me, I didn't have a problem with that at all. And it's kind of and I agree with you that it's not realistic, but I think that's okay. And I think that people can surprise us. And even though, maybe the redneck down the street is going to be a jerk and call him out, but maybe he wouldn't, I mean, hopefully he would surprise you. So, and, I just thought the story was charming. I thought the acting was great, and it wasn't like any other movie I'd seen before. So that's number 2. And number 1, Royal Tenenbaums. I love this movie so much. Yeah, I don't know what more there is to say about it. There's just so many lines of dialogue that keep coming back to me, and I watch it again every couple of years, and it's just, it's one of my favorites.
That's a good list. I'm sorry, you're right. We're not going 6 for 6 or 0 for 6. You called that. But I don't think we disagree as much as maybe you think we disagree. Okay. I think we're on the same page. I came off hard on Lars and the Real Girl. I realized I have the minority opinion of that. There's just... It's something that is so optimistic that I want to believe in it, but part of me is just resistant to it. I don't know. In 6th place is not Lars and the Real Girl, though. In 6th place, I agree with you. I put Benny and Joon. Completely adequate, completely charming romantic comedy of the early 90s. I think that the mental illness is maybe played off as a little bit cute, and it kind of shows up when it needs to and goes away when it needs to. But the movie just wants to put a smile on your face, and I think it does. So it's worth your time, but as far as exploring the theme of mental illness, the least weight in this list. In 5th place, I put Thumbsucker. I really like the characters. I like that everybody has good and bad aspects. I think that if there's something I can't close my hand around, it's just if there is a moral to the story and what that moral might be. Be yourself, even if other people think yourself is crazy, I guess. And maybe in most cases that's good advice, but I would argue not in all of them. If you're prescribed medication, please stay on your medication.
Yeah.
Public service announcement, compliments of Rank and Review. I'll stay on my meds if you stay on yours. Okay. All the way in 4th position, Lars and the Real Girl. Because although it's full of great performances and lots of charm, I guess fundamentally I find the premise almost impossible to swallow, which is like I have to think about it as a fantasy film almost, and then I can get behind it. It's aw-shuck optimism on the level of, I don't know what's a better example, Miracle on 42nd Street or something like this.
Come on.
Am I too harsh? I apologize. Please watch Lars and the Real Girl. This is an endorsement of the movie. It sounds like I'm being mean to it. Wouldn't it be great if everybody was so compassionate and warm and nice to people who are mentally ill? That would be awesome if it was true. Thank you, Hollywood, for showing us this alternate universe. All the way in 3rd place, I'm putting What's Eating Gilbert Grape, because for a movie made in 1993, when a lot of this stuff we're talking about with mental illness was maybe not circulating in the air as much, they take not just the autism, but all of the people's sort of mental state very seriously. And to certain degrees, everybody either warms or breaks your heart in the movie. And it's a tough balancing act. It doesn't work for everybody. I know there are some people who kind of roll their eyes at it, but for me, I think it's a very strong dramedy. And that's a hard balance to get right. So, big props to What's Eating Gilbert Grape, and a really, really strong DiCaprio performance. So, I like that. Somehow Silver Lining Playbooks, even though, like we've both said over and over again, it's a completely familiar, cheesy structure that's just loaded with all of this compassion and warmth. This is probably one of the better date movies that's been made in the last few years, I'm going to guess. I like how everybody's ill and everybody's trying to get better and everybody's helping each other. And it gives you the good feels. It's a warm energy to the movie. I think it's worth your time. Silver Linings Playbook fights its way to number 2. Although that one and What's Eating Gilbert Grape, that was tough. Gilbert Grape almost took second place. But of course, I think you heard me going way over the top about my praise for Wes Anderson and my love of his approach, especially to this type of material. The Royal Tenenbaums. I mean, that's probably one of my favorite movies of the aughts. Mm-hmm. It's if I'm making a list of my favorite movies, I don't know where it would land, but it would probably be somewhere on that list. I am a fanboy of Wes Anderson. I love his aesthetic. If you don't, then it's not going to be the same experience for you. Like I say, my sister, who I love, said this was the most boring movie she'd ever seen. And it broke my heart when she said it. It just broke my heart because I think it's so far from that. It somehow manages to be both artificial and genuine at the same time. I know that doesn't sound like it makes any sense, but that's what it does.
So how come Lars and the Real Girl can't be artificial and genuine at the same time for you then? I know it's a different ballpark, but
the world. I wonder if they had the Wes Anderson aesthetic where it was just slightly arch. It was like the neighborhood in Edward Scissorhands, to pull a weird one, you know? All of the way they portray suburbia in Edward Scissorhands and how they find this freak at the top of the hill and just completely embrace him without question.
Yeah.
That happens in Tim Burton world. That doesn't happen in the real world. In the real world, they call the police and the freak gets arrested and hauled away, right?
But it's called Lars and the Real Girl, not Lars and the Real World.
Right.
Okay, no. It's
it went to fourth place. It's not a bad standing. But I think other than that, I think we maybe disagree a little bit on Lars and the Real World. Even though we both liked it, you clearly liked it more than I did. But for the most part, I think we're more or less on the same page. We got the top and the bottom the same, and the other ones are not interchangeable, but they're interesting in different, similar ways.
Yeah.
I know you've got shopping to do, and I've had you tied up here for 2 hours and change. So, thank you for coming back and doing my show, and not waiting 10 years for doing it. This is nice.
My pleasure.
Should you feel like maybe you'd like to do another one, you're always welcome to. But I don't want to be this guy who's always pestering. You give so much. So, thank you. Let me know how you know where the lists are. So, you know me fairly well-ish. I think you could probably look at the lists and figure out one maybe where the books are cooked. You seem to want that win real bad.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to approach this from a different place next time. I'm gonna start with winning in mind.
All right. Well, you got some shopping to do, and I gotta go medicate.
All right.
Thanks, Mick.
Thank you. It was fun talking to you.
Yeah, it was. Take care. And episode 109 comes to a close. Thank you so much for listening to that one, and we will be back again in 2 weeks. If you would like to tell me how wrong I was about Lars and the Real Girl or about Benny and Joon, you can do that by writing me at ranknreview@gmail.com. That's ranknreview@gmail.com. Thanks for listening to Rank and Review, and please keep doing it.